Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to PechaKucha Night 2023. It's so good to see all of you, and I can't actually see all of you because of this bright light, but I know we have a pretty full house out there, so thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Marcus Keeley, and I'm one of the committee members for PechaKucha Burlington. And I've been with this crew for probably about 4 years now. And tonight is my first night emceeing, so thank you. Try not to boo too much or throw any tomatoes or anything. I'm actually filling in for Chris Dissinger, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight because of a health issue that popped up. So just wanted to say a big thank you to Chris from all of us, because he's done so much to make tonight possible. So he's here in spirit, I know. Well, thank you again for showing up. Tonight is going to be, I think, a pretty remarkable night of storytelling and sharing of passion from community members, many of whom you may know, some of whom you may not. And that's kind of the whole point of this, is really to learn about interesting things that people in our own community are doing and what they're passionate about. So I would love to, before we kind of really get going, I'd love to get a show of hands of who here is here for the first time at a PechaKucha Night. Wow. That is pretty impressive. So thank you for coming out. We hope you will come out to more of these. We do these about 3 times a year. The next one, I think, is going to be June 1st. And then we'll have another one in October. So, and if you have any sort of inkling of energy to possibly want to present and share your passion, I hope you will, because we're always looking for presenters. And hopefully tonight, all the great presentations will inspire you, and you might sign up for that. So, we actually created a short video that is about the length of a PechaKucha presentation that talks a little bit about what PechaKucha is and features some of our former presenters from the past few years. So I'm going to let them do the talking for a little bit, and then I'll be back on in about 7 minutes.
It was almost like TikTok before there was TikTok. I wonder if anybody else has said that. You can use it. There's your pull quote, guys.
I knew this was going to come up.
PechaKucha.
PechaKucha.
PechaKucha. How'd I do?
PechaKucha. The name of that word is PechaKucha. Am I right? It must have been 10 or 11 years ago. Was it the Fleming?
I was at the Shelburne Museum.
I think the first time that I've seen it is just a recording.
I think, to be honest, I actually participated in one before I actually saw one.
My first experience of PechaKucha was actually as a presenter, new to town, didn't know anybody.
And I really liked it because I felt as if somebody just went in and pulled out the heart of everything she wanted to say and put it out there.
My PechaKucha presentation was around the role of art, culture, and speaking truth to power.
It was about my journey as a dancer in Vermont specifically.
I did a project, another photography project called Ruminations, where I'd taken 10,000 pictures of my bedroom.
I asked the audience to move around. They had different things to smell. They had different things to think about.
It was about my artwork, about giant Asian girls, based on how Asian woman feels in America.
My first PechaKucha presentation was about Media Free Week, which was this thing that my family did where we take a week off of media every month.
For the past 10 years, I've been photographing cars and trucks. And the people who get involved with these specialty cars and trucks are filled with passion.
My presentation was mostly about talking about my life and also what I do, where I come from, because as you can tell, I have an accent. I'm not originally from here. but I'm a community builder.
The city of Burlington was kind of revamping the Plan B TV South End. And so my collaborator and I worked with some folks who were living in low-income housing to make sure that their voices were included. And then we created a mural project.
So my presentation, long story short, was about learning to pay attention and practicing that. And the way that I practiced doing that was to basically follow different people unbeknownst to them around Burlington.
So my presentation was about creativity as a way to think, not just as a way to be creative, and creativity not being something you do before you design, but as you continue to design.
I've probably done like 6, 8 maybe. Yeah, I did one on ceilings. Once I did a whole wrap on birdhouses. You try to pace yourself and not get in other people's way, I guess.
The first time, it felt like 10 seconds and 10 minutes all at the same time.
Super fast. And it was like a ride. It felt like a little bit of a roller coaster ride.
It was so uncomfortable, but the digesting of information and sharing in an eloquent way happened really fast, like I was catching up with myself.
One picture, 20 seconds, was very rushed. And I think the adrenaline goes up when there are people in front of you.
If you can just kind of roll with it, it somehow doesn't seem quite as uncomfortable.
I think when I was getting ready to go on stage, I was a little nervous. I had a picture of the cat that I lived with and everyone laughed. And once you get that going, I think like everything seemed to go pretty quickly.
I really used the 6 minutes and 40 seconds as a structure. It's kind of the sandbox to play within. And that practice was one of the most meaningful practices and experiences I've had in a really long time.
Just for the sheer joy of being up there on stage, it kind of justifies all this pain and angst that you've gone through, not just in the preparing it, but some of the projects take a long, long time, and you're building it up and you're not showing it to anybody and you're wondering is it worth it?
That's just human instinct. We want to share what we think to others. If you just keep it yourself, it would not go anywhere.
Having the opportunity for an individual human being to share with an intimate group what they know, what they care about is really, really important and really, really needed during these times.
It gives other people validation that maybe the shared passion exists. And I think it gives permission for anything to be exhilarating.
Yes, I would, absolutely.
I did it again, December 31st, 2019.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I would do it again.
I would do it again. Yeah.
Totally, absolutely. I can't wait to do it again.
I would happily do it again. I would love to do it again.
Of course, would I do it again? Of course.
I would definitely do this again. I thought it was really fun.
Would I do it again? Absolutely. It's a marvelous discipline, and it's really fun.
I hope you all enjoyed that. We had fun making that, and I think we plan to make some future ones with some future presenters. So that talked a little bit about what the PechaKucha format is, but in case you didn't catch it, basically every presentation is a set of 20 slides, and each of those slides runs on a timer for 20 seconds each. So once you get started, you're off to the races, and it just keeps going, and you got to go with it. So that adds up to 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and that's what this means. So tonight, you're probably going to see a few of us with these T-shirts. Those are people who are involved with the committee. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to grab us, and we can, hopefully answer any questions that you have. There's also a table in the back near the bar that has some swag, some stickers, things you guys can pick up, and definitely check out our website as well. So The last thing I'll say about sort of these presentations, which I think you saw in that video, is they can be about anything, really. The one thing we say is they're more passion than pitch. So we really are just interested in sort of hearing about the things that people are curious about, what sort of the things that they're passionate about, and that ranges the gamut. And so every night can be totally different. So I actually am super excited about tonight because I only know the titles of the presentations. I don't actually know what the presenters are going to say. So I think we're in for a good time tonight. So I just want to take a moment and recognize our biggest sort of supporter and sponsor in producing these events, and that's Mascoma Bank. And yeah, if you want to give an applause. Truly, they have been amazing. Their support allowed us to produce that video that you just saw. Really, their support has allowed us to be here tonight. And so, honestly, we wouldn't be able to put these on if it wasn't for them. So we're just really grateful for their support. And they've definitely been a great community partner, and definitely excited to have their support again this year. Some other groups that have really supported us in all that we've done in this community is Media Factory. They've been with us helping to film the event tonight. You'll see a few people behind cameras. So these are all filmed, and they actually will live on the Media Factory website in a number of weeks. We also post them to our social media accounts. So if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have all the great footage. Solidarity of Unbridled Labor is a design studio in town, and they've helped with all the branding and the materials and just been a great partner along the way. And then 7 Days has been with us from the beginning and helps us with promotion, advertising. So just if maybe we can give all of these supporters a clap of applause. So PechaKucha Night, of course, doesn't just happen here in Burlington. This is something that actually originated, I believe, in Japan, and that's where the name comes from. And it's all over the world. So currently there are 140 cities that are having PechaKucha Nights with some regularity, or 140 countries, sorry, over 1,200 cities, and 130,000 presentations that have been done. So PechaKucha has a website that you can go to, and you can view a lot of these presentations from all these different cities. And I recommend that because it's fascinating. You get kind of a little insight into what these different places are like. And we've been here in Burlington since 2010 in a number of different venues. Some of you have probably been to some of those venues. And we've been here at Flynn Space for now a few years, and we're really excited to be back here and to have it in this space again. So this is our 33rd volume. And yeah, we're just happy to be here. So tonight, we're going to feature a list of 10 different presenters. So we can kind of pull their names up here really quickly. So these 10 presenters are going to share their passions, and we have a really amazing lineup tonight. There were no COVID cancellations this time, which was great. Sometimes have run into that, so we're really excited for that. And the way tonight's format is going to work is we're going to have 5 presentations, and then we're going to have a little intermission, also, a beer break, you could call it that. And that'll be probably about 15 minutes or so. And then we're going to come on back and do the remaining 5 presentations. So that's enough preamble from me. I think we should get started. So maybe we can get kind of a round of applause to amp everything up really quickly. Okay. Thank you. You guys are so good. Such a good crowd. So our first presenter tonight is Rob and Perlah, and their presentation is "The Kids Are Mostly All Right." So if you give an applause for Robin.
I'm going to use notes. So let me get to the top of my notes. And before I start, I didn't get a chance to put any photo credits on here, so The photos are a mix of photos taken by myself, some of my staff members that are part of the Governor's Institute of Vermont, which is what I'm going to talk about, and then some by Candace Hope Photography, who's a photographer out of Brattleboro. So thank you to all of the people who took photos. All right, here we go. We've all seen the news. Our teens are in crisis. Can't imagine why. Maybe it has something to do with going through puberty while stuck in the house during a worldwide pandemic, the steady feed of unrealistic expectations and social pressures disguised as dopamine. Or maybe it's the existential dread caused by the climate crisis, school shootings, and threats to marginalized communities. But I'm going to talk about a different story tonight. We're going to talk about joy and potential, community and trust, self-directed learning and play, where screens connect us rather than isolate us. I want to talk about my experience this summer working with teenagers in person for the first time since before the pandemic, the Governor's Institute of Vermont Tech and Design, held at Champlain College, where I also happen to teach. As someone who's worked with teens for the last 20 years, I can say with certainty that our young people have been radically transformed by the past few years. But also, despite the headlines, the transformation is not all bad. Okay, so for starters, I don't think anyone takes for granted the privilege of being in community the same way we did all the way back in 2019. We have a hunger for human connection and for the opportunity to be together face to face. But social anxiety is at an all-time high, and the lives of our teens are increasingly mediated, with more time spent in isolation, interacting with friends through video game consoles and online servers. So how do we thread the needle and give students the community they crave while scaffolding the experience to help ameliorate their anxiety? We start with low-stake activities that encourage easy and fail-proof social interactions. Team challenges such as finding the hidden Among Us characters all over campus, but the only way to get points is take a selfie with the character and another person. Rather than simply raising hands to vote on what movie to watch, we hold real-time movie brackets where people vote by moving their bodies, but we do it outside at night with the movies projected on the building. And believe it or not, high school students are not too cool for Duck, Duck, Goose. They just need to be in an environment where it's cool to be uncool. We've all heard and maybe directly experienced how isolated our teenagers were during the pandemic. It's true, but here's what I also know. Most of them were not just scrolling absent-mindedly on Instagram, though I'm sure there was plenty of that, and also Minecraft, lots of Minecraft. But all of those hours logged on YouTube, it turns out our kids were actually learning things on their own, all kinds of things, how to code, how to build robots, how to make games, play the bass, how to brine chicken about history, art, and of course, lots and lots of useless stuff in between. But here's what surprised me most this summer. Despite, or maybe because of a year and a half of remote and hybrid school, this group was ready to learn. They were thirsty to be in the classroom. And to be clear, this is a super heterogeneous group of students, always has been. But despite the range of academic skills and experience, this group was more prepared and more excited for their classes than any group of students I'd ever had at a summer institute. Upside down learning is real. Kids can and will teach themselves whatever they want to know on YouTube. We can ignore that fact or embrace it. They have a world of knowledge available at their fingertips, and if they're curious, if they're interested, they'll find the information they need. The key is to get them interested. Experiences like GIV are awesome because they allow students to dive into topics that they're already interested in and pursue self-directed projects with the help of adult mentors. If we want to reach students, we need to give them choice, meaningful choice. Let them work on projects they care about, respect their ability to learn, give them the resources and tools, but don't talk at them or lecture. Let them make stuff, arty stuff, techie stuff, smart stuff, stupid stuff, silly stuff. It doesn't matter what they make. It's the making that's important. You've heard it before, hands-on learning, experiential learning, project-based learning. These ideas are not new. But I think the pandemic has allowed students to recognize what they can accomplish on their own and on their own terms. Conversely, it's our job to show them what can be gained by being in communities of learning. If they can't get what they need, they'll check out. It's that simple. So the other thing I noticed is how young this group was, socio-emotionally speaking. I mean, goofy, silly, make disgusting concoctions in the cafeteria, kind of young, acting like middle school, kind of young. which makes sense. They missed almost 2 years of social interaction. But again, rather than seeing this as a loss, I began to see the opportunities that this social disruption opens up. They were so full of silly joy, so kind to each other, so lacking in pretension. I think this is really something to celebrate. There was a lack of self-consciousness in this group, less posturing, more playing. It was remarkably different and remarkably fun. Finally, I think I've got just shy of 2 minutes. I want to talk about hybridity. In a minute, you're going to see some maybe 20 seconds, I don't know, some screenshots from the Discord channel, which was happening in live time during the Institute. This chat took place during lunch, and if you look closely, it's a little small, you'll see some disgusting concoctions that the students were making. Lemon float, anyone? And you can see other students chiming in on the conversation on the chat. Some were in the room and some were not. There's a fluidity to the way our students are using technology. They can seamlessly be both in person and in a digital space in a way that most adults find uncomfortable and disorienting. This has been happening for years, but again, the pandemic certainly put digital communication into hyperdrive. And again, in this moment, I'm choosing to look at the opportunities this presents for building and maintain relationships in community, not because I want to deny the impact that screen time and social media is having on the mental health of our young people, because it's not going away, so we need to figure out a way how to change it from a bug to a feature. If you looked closely, the last panel of the chat was a post made in September, 3 months after the Institute ended. One of the students was attending a Champlain open house and made a new disgusting concoction, water, Dr. Pepper, Gingerade, Powerade. The chat picked up immediately right where it left off. Because the community was simultaneously built both in the digital realm and in real life, it's a community that can persist beyond the boundaries of a single week on a college campus. It can exist both IRL and digitally, synchronously and asynchronously for an indefinite amount of time. So, as I titled this talk, the kids are mostly all right. Together alone, they are developing resiliency, figuring out new ways to learn, build relationships, and keeping a sense of humor while surrounded by chaos and impending doom. So.
Thank you, Robin. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so up next we have Bill Drew and the presentation, Life, Death, and 7 Kids. So Bill, welcome up.
All right, hello Burlington. You know, just thinking driving over here, I moved to Vermont 30 years ago, almost to the day, and today I call Vermont home. And I was thinking about how lucky and fortunate I am to be able to say that. All right, let's get started. Marriage, the biggest crapshoot around. I mean, every marriage has an unpredictable ending, and come to think of it, the middle is pretty unknown too. When my parents got married, they agreed to explore the unknown together. Those weren't their vows, but let's be honest, that's pretty much what every married couple agrees to. Bursting at the seams, true for my mother and for my parents' apartment in Watertown, Mass. I was the 4th child born to Dick and Alice Drew, and after I came along, apartment living just wasn't going to cut it. So they went house hunting, and the city of Newton, Mass is where they decided to put down their roots. 1 shower. My parents bought this house in 1966 with only 1 full bath. It's a pretty big issue because my parents added 3 more kids after I was born. 7 kids, 2 parents, 1 shower. Every morning, just take a number and hope for the best. Now, this could have gone horribly wrong. 7 kids born in just 8 years, but for some reason, our tightly compacted family was very close. You might even say peaceful. Just like otters, we moved together in a caravan, or in our case, a maroon Chevy station wagon. But let's be honest, seriously. Who in their right mind takes 7 kids to the beach? So, as my mother sat inside on the phone with a Winston cigarette in one hand and a gin and tonic in the other, she'd send the 7 of us to a water park, commonly referred to as the side yard. You know, in the English language, one word mattered more to us than any other: Halloween. We'd use pillowcases as candy bags and literally sprint from house to house. And my dad would bring down the bathroom scale and weigh everyone's bag. And he'd crown a winner. Pure, unbridled excitement. Some of us just couldn't hold it in. All right, so how do you honor Christ rising from the dead? You forced your kids to dress up like the Brady Bunch on crack and pose for a lame-ass family picture. Every Easter, without fail, my dad snapped a family portrait in exactly the same spot, whether we liked it or not. So every holiday meal, the kids were relegated to the kitchen, but each year one of us might get invited to the dining room, like getting called up from the minor leagues. I remember getting the call once and holding out a wine glass, brashly hoping they'd serve me some Blue Nun or cold duck. It's pretty ballsy for a 12-year-old. Look, who needs friends, right? As kids, we stress out over making friends. And back then, making friends was a matter of life or death. Sorry, I just can't relate. I was born into a friend group. They came standard. You didn't have to impress them or invite them over to your house. They just showed up, which is about 90% of friendship anyway. Now, I only have 2 kids, and sometimes I worry I'm playing favorites. If I had 7 kids, I'd be a basket case. But somehow, my mother found a way to navigate these murky emotional waters, and to this day, I don't know how she did it. But I feel like her favorite, which is precisely how my 6 siblings feel too. Excitement, served with a side dish of complete panic and debilitating nausea. The first day of school, it never got easy. It's an unhealthy obsession with what to wear and what to say and who to sit with. And guess what? Another annual photo tradition in our family. Sure, Dad, whatever you say. On Saturdays in the fall, my dad would head off to a Boston College football game and he'd tell us to rake the leaves while he was gone. We wouldn't. Instead, we'd play football and listen to the game on a tiny transistor radio, and then we'd scramble to rake the leaves just seconds before he got home. So, have you ever played hockey in a bird bath? In the winter, our dad hooked up a hose in the kitchen sink and flooded our backyard, a 10-foot by 10-foot sheet of bumpy, patchy ice, and we'd invite neighbors over and play some of the worst hockey ever attempted on the smallest skating rink in recorded history. A leather briefcase at the beach? That's normal, right? For a few years, my dad rented a house in York Beach, Maine, and my dad would drive to work in Boston, then head back to Maine and meet us at the beach, wearing his gaudy sports coat, a tie that was about 6 inches wide, and carrying his trusty leather briefcase, and, oh yeah, shorts and black knee socks too, of course. So what do you call 9 people crammed into a 27-foot motorhome for a month? I call it the summer of '78. My dad showed up one July day and announced he had rented a cramped home on wheels and we were headed to the Grand Canyon. So I checked out the RV and I noticed only one tiny bathroom. Just like home, I thought. Winston Churchill once said, "We shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us." So the 7 of us are who we are because of that house and everything that happened there. Every fish cake dinner on Friday night, every Saturday night watching the Partridge Family, and every wonderfully crappy birthday cake. So thankfully, my dad was not into collecting dead butterflies. These memories are crystal clear to me because of my dad's hobby. He was an amateur photographer, slides actually, tens of thousands of slides. His pictures and his life, the one he built and saw through his lens, is captured forever in black circular time machines called carousels. As the 7 of us got older, our individual lives took over, track practice and clarinet lessons, then college, marriage, and grandkids. 7 dramatically different individuals that have never lost sight of the one thing that they all share, each other. You know, in the end, the 7 of us, we know we're close, and we don't talk about it much. We don't need to, because every day at that address, we had everything and everyone we could ever need. We don't need the pictures to convince us, but we do need them to remind us. And so my dad died last summer, and the house just went on the market about 2 weeks ago, and I volunteered to go through all his slides, happily stuck in the past, happily reminding myself of the joyful chaos that those 2 created in that place that we called home.
Wow, thank you, Bill. It's amazing the way you brought those photos to life. Thank you very much for that. Next up, we have Catie Camp with Old Houses, New Friends. So welcome Catie up to the stage.
All right. Well, let's see. When I was asked to do this, and I thought, how do you figure out one thing to talk about? Because most of us have very complicated lives. But I have recently returned to Vermont from being away for a number of years, and I'm looking at different things I've done in the past, and I realized I now have a new perspective on something that I did full-time and part-time, and just realized I was much more passionate about than I was at the time. So we're going to review my history as a tour guide in the crazy, wacky tour guide world of Massachusetts. So I think we can start. So these are a number of buildings that I've come in contact through with my life, and I realized that as a child, I thought buildings were part of the environment. And I remember the first time I saw a house being built, I was flabbergasted. I just thought they had always been there. And they all had their own stories, just like people had stories. And I had the fortune of being able to actually live in an amazing building. So for a brief period, well, not brief, 10 years actually when I think about it, but I had the fortune of living in this house. And people would say, oh, do you imagine you lived there and all that? And I realize now that instead I was sharing. It wasn't that I imagined living there, I just loved all the stories associated with it. Now, fortune took me away from Vermont, and I ended up actually driving one day, being lost, frustrated about living in the city, and I saw all this grass. This is actually Watertown, Mass, where I think you grew up for a while. And I saw that green grass and I said, I need to work there because I miss the grass of Vermont. So I called them and they said, oh, sure, we have a job. We have a job as a tour guide. And all I could imagine was my life like this. And I said, oh, I am never wearing a costume. That is not me. And I imagined little old ladies with the title docent and just boring school children all the rest of my life. But instead, I was introduced to people like this. These are two of my friends that I met when I lived in Boston. They have names that suit being a tour guide. This is Camille Arbogast and Prentice Crozier. Very different types of tour guides, but passionate about what they do, and they sort of infused me with that passion. Because I had always loved history, and I'd always loved houses, so I thought, why not? So they referred me from working at that one house to also working at this house. I soon discovered different things about being a tour guide. At this house, I was introduced to the booty. I don't know if any of you have had to experience the booty. I was sometimes criticized by my boss because if people forget their booties, I didn't make them put them back on. It was sort of a symbol of an old style of doing tours. But, you know, they had expensive rugs, so we would do it, you know. But yes, so in this building, I learned a lot about being a tour guide. One day I was in this room, and a door similar to this over here actually fell right out. Just as I was demonstrating, the door here came down as I was talking about the beautiful musical instruments. So I held it dramatically and said to the guide, to the people on my tour, I know you're not supposed to leave me here alone, but go find somebody. So I then was promoted to be allowed to do walking tours. Now, in the city of Boston, being part of the walking tour community is huge. That other one showed a street in Boston, which is the center of the African American community. And it was wonderful to be able to introduce that whole rich history of the South Slope of Boston to people. Tourists would come from everywhere. Sometimes you'd do 3 or 4 tours a day running around, and you'd be introduced to all these beautiful houses. Then I decided, all right, I'm now ready to branch out to working for other companies or organizations, nonprofits. This is the Old Manse in Concord, and again, sort of in the hierarchy of these tour guide world. This was one of the most popular because Concord has so much history. And again, I met interesting people. This is a gentleman who rode his bike back and forth across the country 3 or 4 times. But the Old Manse is where Emerson wrote Nature, the Hawthornes lived there, Thoreau planted a garden there, and he was a student of them, so he came to be a tour guide. Now, one of the organizations I worked for was called Historic New England. It used to be called the Society for the Preservation of New England Antiquities, but after a while, they thought that was actually not really appropriate, so they changed it to Historic New England. And the house that you just saw is Gropius House, which many people said, that was built in 1938. How can that be an antiquity? But it's part of the rich history of architecture in New England. And it's the first house that I worked in that I thought, oh yeah, I would live there. All of the houses had rich histories of the people who lived there, what was happening in the society then. But this one really moved me. This picture, for instance, if it doesn't go by too fast, that mirror is actually on a clear piece of glass. The Gropiuses had escaped from Nazi Germany. They were very German, but so they built that glass wall. They slept on that side, closed the door, and then left all the windows open because they needed to sleep in very cold weather. But this is back to Gore Place where I started out. This is, believe it or not, 48 acres in the middle of Watertown and Waltham, 10 miles exactly from Logan Airport. But one of the other things that I loved about house museums, and you could see in that big expanse, is that they become a center of the community. The people who work there in some ways are very strange. One of them, Prentice, was at our house watching a movie and he couldn't stop but saying, oh, we have that cup in my museum. Oh, look, no, that dress would not have been invented before that day. So there can be struggles, but there are people that are passionate about what they do, and the people that come on tours are also very interesting. So it brought together my interest in people, my interest in history, and my interest in community. These are some of the people I met along that journey. You can see Prentice and Camille there and some others. These people together, there, as I said, are many itinerant life of being a tour guide. They work in one house for a couple of days, then they drive 80 miles and work in another. There's 18 houses that are served by these people. Some people do 5 or 6 houses. Now, one of the downsides of being acquiring an interest in going on tours and house guides is that you do end up dragging your family to many of them. Some of you may notice or recognize this house. This is Hildene down in southern Vermont, which I had never been to, even though I lived in Vermont for years and years. But once I got introduced to that world and the commitment of the people who work in that world, I said, I gotta go to Hildene, so.
Okay, thank you very much, Catie. Okay, how are you guys doing out there? Everyone enjoying so far? Okay, cool. So our next presenter is someone you may recognize from the video at the beginning. He actually presented a few years ago, and his name is Rick Carlson. He's going to be presenting on the flying monkeys of Burlington, Vermont. So, Rick, welcome up.
Can you help me out?
Yeah.
Okay, right there?
Okay.
Good. The first winged monkey appeared in Burlington in 1975, sculpted into the roofline of an historic building on the corner of Bank and St. Paul. He was positioned so that he begged discovery, crouched, ever vigilant, always on guard, and softly bathed in green light. An icon was born. The Emerald City of Oz was a waterbed store and a politically motivated gift boutique, actually known as a head shop. Waterbeds were wildly popular, and in that era, sales were up to 30% of the entire bedding industry. Emerald City was a cultural mecca. His maid emerged from the primordial soup behind a slate turret on the south side of the building. These two mythical creatures were sculpted in steel by Steve Larrabee, an artist with extraordinary talent. For the better part of 10 years, they stood their post in downtown Burlington. The head shop carried pipes and bongs and other lifestyle accoutrements that have reflected the social climate. Products were sold with a wink and a smile as we skirted legality. Here is a musician, Doug Pomeroy, a drummer who ran the gift boutique. Waterbed manufacturers hosted conferences with hundreds of exhibitors and presented Aqua Awards for creative advertising campaigns. Emerald City won its first of 6 Aqua Awards, this time for the effects of a waterbed store on the skyline of a city. It was presented in a packed grand ballroom in Los Angeles. Here's our crew in the 70s, in this photograph by Fred G. Hill. Steve Larrabee is at the far right in the hat. On his right is Doug Pomeroy. I'm crouched up front. On the far left is Dan Doyle, Vicki Wood, Steve's brother Jack, and top right, UVM's Patrick Orr. There was a time when I was presented with a friendship quilt, and 20 friends each embroidered a square. They were all involved with the development of Emerald City, and it remains a truly humbling gift of which I am beyond proud. This is Steve Larrabee's embroidered square. In '93, one of the monkeys was stolen. Children were dismayed, and a pall fell across the land. Steve created his replacement, a female sculpted in copper, in heat, baying at the moon. Her little fingers grabbed the edge of the gabled roof, and she screamed in silent delight. The stolen monkey was retrieved by police, but Emerald City closed due to illness. Flying monkeys circled the city in search of a new home. The copper goddess with a silent scream landed amidst a patch of wild blackberries in Burlington's New North End, where she settled into the landscape. I was ill for a long time. The silver lining was Melinda Moulton, who with Lisa Steele developed the waterfront on Lake Champlain, and the first 2 flying monkeys relocated to Main Street Landing. The view coming down Main Street is fantastic. In the dark days of disease, Michael Thurston created an award-winning video with respect to being so terribly ill. In it, he said, Rick saw that the flying monkeys through the eyes of a child were his greatest endeavor. Michael's talent, friendship, and guidance has been a staple in my life for 50 years. In the winter of '04, magic filled the air, and the guardians of the clock tower were with child, lo. In August, Mama delivered twins. They built a nursery on the back of the train station and sequestered the protective mother with her children. Throughout the land, there was great joy. The copper goddess, still in heat, landed above the Performing Arts Center at Lakin College and also serves as a logo for the theaters. Her clarion call, while but a whisper to us, pierces the primeval veil, and she lures a rogue male. The rogue lover is seen here in construction. Steve crafted a series of splendid creatures in copper from his Jericho studio. There's something special about the raw beauty of copper before he applied the weathered patina. I call this image assigning gender. Here, the rogue lover takes flight in the rain. This installation was no small task and was coordinated by property manager Joe Ryan and the talented team at Evergreen Roofing. Up, up and away, my little pretty. Are we having fun yet? Securely mounted, he lands on the cupola at Lakin College. Here he sets his eye on the object of his desire and casts an arc of sexual tension across the theater. If you have binoculars, you will see that indeed he is quite excited. Steve Cox, Hollywood author of 22 books on pop culture, traces the history of winged monkeys in a coffee table book to be published this year. This book will include a stunning array of original winged monkey artwork and will include Burlington's flighted simians. None of this would have happened without the vision of Melinda Moulton. Melinda was the CEO of Main Street Landing, and her focus and leadership coordinated everyone involved to create this diorama. She's an extraordinary patron of the arts, loves these creatures, and takes such joy as people respond. Steve Larrabee was not just a sculptor. He was a brilliant woodworker who built houses, crafted great rooms, furniture and guitars, carved in wood, made paintings, and brought people to life with watercolor. He loved watercolor. He was a loyal friend and was really quite funny. I remember laughter the most. In the dark of night and in the blink of an eye, the winged monkeys soar over the mountains and glide over the lake because, you see, fantasy is real. These winged monkeys are real, very, very real. Look at them, and if you don't believe me, ask a child. Ask any child. Savor that moment. Share that joy.
Wow, that was great, Rick. Thank you for bringing those alive for us. That was amazing. So, okay, so our last presenter before the intermission is Alan Matson, and they're going to be presenting Math. Fun, funny, and beautiful. A proof. So let's give it up for Alan.
You never really want to follow the babies, and you never really want to follow the winged monkeys, I don't think. Yeah, welcome to Math. I know it's most people's nightmare. It's the horror show that comes just before intermission. But what I really want to show you tonight, I want to infect you with my love of math and how it plays out in my life and how I find the beauty and the fun and the funny in this supposedly horrible concept. But math is the international, if not the universal language. And what we see here is a plaque that was put on the Pioneer space probes, which were the first items to ever leave our solar system. And in this plaque is nothing more than geometry and basic number theory. Not numbers like we see here, which is our base 10 number system, but a base 2 number system called binary. But the base 10 system that we're familiar with allows us to create beautiful numbers such as pi and calculate with them such things as circles and probability and physics. But to calculate, we need objects to calculate with. And I also collect mechanical objects of calculation, primarily slide rules of different shapes and sizes. And yeah, there's a whole society out there that does the same sort of crazy stuff. But if you notice, down here is an object called the curta. And when you love objects like this, what do? Instead of just buying one, you buy one in pieces, 600 and some odd. And you buy watchmaking tools and you put it back together yourself. But the curta was invented by a man named Kurt Herzog, who was in a concentration camp during World War II. And that just shows you that math is really people. And the person you see here is Carl Friedrich Gauss, a mathematician of the 18th and 19th centuries. And we have the normal curve here, which was one of Gauss's creation. And Gauss truly is probably one of the most famous mathematicians of all time. Yeah, that great oxymoron, famous mathematician, according to my wife. But she forgets how many great movies there are about mathematicians. We see here various folks who have done everything from game theory to number theory to, heck, sending folks to the moon and actually teaching kids calculus. So how can you say that it's an oxymoron? And then there's like the top 10 lists. Everybody's got their top 10 of, songs of the year. I have my top 10 equations. And it's not the same top 10 that every mathematician would have, but these are 10 that I find especially interesting and which I've found enlightening over my love of math. One of them is pictured right here, creates this amazing beauty. There's nothing more than addition and multiplication going on in this equation, and yet it creates such a fantastically beautiful image, the Mandelbrot set. Simple calculations can lead to amazing beauty. But not just simple calculations, but also simple manipulations. Take a belt, twist it 1/2 time, put it together, and you've created the Mobius strip. And the version we see here with the ants crawling around it was created by M.C. Escher. These ants will soon learn that there's only one side to this Mobius strip and only one edge. But also simple types of math like algebra can be extended to create beautiful scenes like this. Here we have 9 representations of how the symmetry and motion can occur of a 4-sided figure called a tetrahedron. This branch of math comes, as I said, straight from algebra, known as abstract algebra. But abstract algebra does more than create beauty. It creates a pastime for me. Yeah, I collect Rubik's Cubes. And yes, that's an original from the 70s that I had one when I was a kid. Now, I'll be honest, the one in the upper left is actually called the Ghost Cube. I've never quite been able to solve. But here we have applied symmetry. And what we have here is symmetry in action. These images all come from one of my favorite buildings in the world, the Alhambra. The Alhambra is the great Moorish palace in Granada, Spain. And the Moors and the Islams were great at math. I mean, they gave us the word algebra, algorithm, and Arabic numbers. Oh, we got to get to some proofs here. Now, I don't know if you can tell this, but this is actually a proof of what happens when you add up numbers. And do you notice that we're adding up numbers? We're using arithmetic. And what we use for the proof is a rectangle and 2 triangles, and then we apply some unknowns or algebra, connecting 3 areas of math. But we don't just do it with counting numbers, we do it with odd numbers as well. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, add up to 25, another square number. So think about it tonight. Add up the numbers 1 through 20 and see what you get. I'm sorry, add up the first 20 odd numbers and see what you get. Has something to do with 640. But not all these visual proofs are quite so simple. I mean, it should be obvious here what's going on. By the way, it was obvious to Carl Friedrich Gauss, who came up with this proof. But once again, it's numbers, it's geometry, and it's algebra, showing us how easy it is to cut a pizza into 17 exactly same pieces. And this is math today. Gauss was the 1800s. This is today. This picture comes from the New York Times from 2 weeks ago. A group of collaborative mathematicians asked the question, how many ways can we actually divide a square into 5 similar rectangles? Never been asked before, but using, again, algebra and other aspects of math able to prove it. But math occurs where you might not expect it. All 3 of the players in these scenes are using math. They're using game theory. Left, right, center, where do I go? Bet, fold. What do I do? Raise? Poker players and soccer players are using game theory continuously. Aha! The word problem. We have to have the word problem before we leave our math. If you can get 4,000 oranges into the red car, 2,000 oranges into the silver car, and you have 2 men moving oranges from the, well, wait a second. We don't really need to do this. This is not what tonight is about. We need the proof. And the proof of what an excitement about math can do is right here. For the last 15 years, I've been volunteering in the Burlington middle schools, teaching a math enrichment program called Math Counts. And 3 of the kids here are 3 of my many who have gone through my program. And I hope I've infected them with the love of math, shown them some of the beauty and some of the fun, just as I hope I've been able to do tonight with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. Okay, so as I think you guys have seen, there's a wide variety of types of presentations here, all great. So now we're at intermission, and so we'll take about a 15-minute break. Okay, so I hope you guys got some snacks back there. I hope you had a good intermission, got out to the restroom if you needed it. We're going to start back up. I just want to say one more time, I know Heather came and talked to me and said, we have a lot of stickers, we have a lot of buttons, and we would love for you to take them. So they're all free. At the end of the night, if you walk, there's a table near the exit if you want to grab some. If you want to bring a sticker, give it to someone else. we'd love for you guys to take these. So please do. Okay. So we're gonna get going on our second half, and I wanna have like a little participatory, interactive experience here, and I'm hoping you'll join me. It's low pressure, low stakes, but we would love to capture a crowd shot of you guys chanting the name. If you could feel the energy behind that. I know it's like a little sort of, it feels like you're at a sporting event, but we just want to capture that energy. So what we're going to do is everyone that's on, I want to pull this out if I can. So everyone that is on this side of the screen, so this side of the center line is going to say Pecha. And then everyone on this side is going to say Kucha. So we're going to practice this. So, okay, could I get all the Pecha people to say Pecha? Pecha! And this side, Kucha, Pecha, 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 Oh! Didn't that feel good? I don't know, it kind of got my heart rate up. So, okay, well, thank you guys for doing that. That was awesome. Okay, so we're going to get going. Our first presenter of this half is Scott Finn, and his presentation is entitled, What We Can Learn from My Autistic Son. So Scott, welcome up.
Hey everybody, in my day job I'm the head of Vermont Public, but I promise not to ask you to become a sustaining member. This is my son Max. The first thing you should know about Max is that he loves to swing, from a tire swing, in a playground, in a hammock. The bigger and riskier the better. I swear he is 5 degrees away from doing a 360. My son Max also loves hard physical labor. Here he is digging a garden at Mansfield High School and picking up fallen apples at Yates Orchard. He especially loves doing hard labor when he's rewarded with Yates Orchard's Dreamy, which you may know is a cider apple donut with a maple creamy on top. Yeah, I'd pick up a lot of fallen apples for that. Max loves water. He loves to jump in it. He loves to swim in it. He loves to sit in it. One of his favorite things to do in a canoe or sailboat is just to lean over and put his hand in the water and watch it trail through. Have you ever done that? Feels pretty good. My son Max is also autistic, which means there's a variety of behaviors and different ways of seeing the world that we'll talk about. He also has apraxia, which means that he has difficulty speaking with words and he uses sort of nonverbal communication. I like this idea of neurodiversity, that we're all thinking differently. And my son's brain is really different. Here he is doing what what my wife and I often call scientifically weird shit. Like putting all the paper plates out for display. He's also sensitive to loud noises, bright lights. We often lock things to keep him out of trouble. So to keep him from opening the washing machine and taking all the clothes out. Or from eating things in large quantities that are bad from him. Or to keep him from eloping, which is just wandering out of the house and going out in the woods and not coming back. So he also likes to listen to things repeatedly, like this. Kiss an angel good morning, and love her like the devil when you get back home. That was our 2022 soundtrack. From Charlie Pride. We need to edit his Spotify. Did you know that autistic people are often forced to move to other states to get services? That's what we had to do when Max was 4 because health insurance companies didn't cover services for autism in West Virginia where we lived. We told his story and then later they changed the law. And because of Max, kids in West Virginia now can get services. We've moved several times. We moved to Florida, where this is his sister, Iris, and my wife, Wendy Radcliffe. We moved to Florida, back to West Virginia when they changed the law, and then to Vermont, where although things are not perfect, we definitely have gotten better services for him. So this is the story about Max, his parents, and the governor of West Virginia, Governor Justice. I was running West Virginia Public Broadcasting at the time, and we reported that Governor Justice's coal companies refused to pay mine safety fines, refused to pay their vendors, and my favorite, stiffed the Boy Scouts out of $10 million. After we did that reporting, West Virginia Public Broadcasting, which was a state-run agency, was zeroed out of Governor Justice's budget. This would effectively kill public media in West Virginia. Meanwhile, Justice fired my wife, Wendy, who was the state's environmental advocate, which is an internal watchdog position. Wendy was really good at helping families who were hurt by the mining and the gas drilling industries, and that was just too much for the industry. This is us at the state capitol, just a couple of weeks after this all went down. We were attending Autism Awareness Day, where the governor met Max. And the governor, whose sister is autistic, really took a shine to Max and allowed us to have a conversation with him, not just about autism, but about public broadcasting. I made the case, and to his credit, he backed off the proposal to eliminate our funding. We moved to Vermont not much later, coincidentally, and found an amazing support system. Here is the support system for Max at Camel's Hump Middle School, a great place. And this is what Max taught me. Number one, there are a lot of giving, helpful people in the world. You just have to know where to look. Number two, don't be afraid to hug. During the days of the pandemic, when the UPS guy came up, Max would run outside, jump up and down, and hug him. This got out. A WCAX reporter ended up doing a story about this, and that story went viral. And then later, ABC Nightly News picked up that story of Max and this driver. His name's Kip. He's a wonderful guy. I hope that this story does something to demolish the stereotype that people with autism don't have deep feelings. You can't look at this and not know that Max deeply cares for Kip. The third lesson, take time to enjoy the view. Max likes a good view after a hike like any of us, but unlike his dad, he's not quite so determined to hike up the mountain at full speed to get there. He's willing to take his time, he will sit down. Sometimes he'll go halfway up a mountain and want to turn around and go back down again. One time we hiked the deepest canyon in the eastern United States, which is called the New River Gorge. We got all the way to the bottom, and that middle picture of Max is him sitting at the bottom of the gorge, refusing to go back up again. For 2 hours. It was only the promise of pizza that actually made him finally get up and go. When we first moved here, I took Max sledding, or sliding, at Casey's Hill. It was snowing lightly, it was quiet, it was cold. We walked to the top of the hill, and I wanted to go down, but Max, he just sat down. I tried to encourage him to get going. I promised him pizza, and he just stayed seated there. And then we looked across the field at this beautiful snow coming down, Mount Mansfield in the distance, this timeless view now shared only by him and me. And I sat down next to Max, and we took a moment to be in the moment and just be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's really nice. So before we jump into this next one, I just want to, and Scott, you were perfect on this, but for all the presenters, I know some people in the back want to make sure that they can hear the presentation, so just please speak directly into the microphone, and then you can kind of look forward and see your slides here. So, but you guys are doing a great job so far. So next up, we have Trish Denton. And this is a preoccupation with magical narrative inventions. So welcome up, Trish.
So I've been taking some time to reflect, and I'm trying to figure out when the preoccupation started. So let's just start at the beginning. In the 1980s, my mom was a studio photographer working in a mall taking portraits of people. And so everyone in my family was sort of subject to this treatment. Here I am in a fictitious cherry orchard, like living my best life. All of my family members experienced this and this first glimpse of utopia. So maybe that's where the preoccupation started. But it also could have started at one of my cousin's birthday parties, where it was perfectly normal to be surrounded by clowns. You can see I am becoming clown-like myself in the midst of my aunt and uncle's clown friends. They had lots of clown friends because they sold concessions at horse races like snow cones and cotton candy. But it also could have been at the Christmas carnival that was at Joe Louis Arena every year, where I would see like animatronic snowmen and a 25-foot tall Santa Claus. And again, all of this was perfectly normal. So maybe that's where the magical seed was planted. But most likely, it has something to do with my parents' treatment of Christmas and other holidays altogether. It was perfectly normal for them to become Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus themselves. Not only were my parents fantastic, but they were utterly fabulous. They were undoubtedly the sexiest parents in the trailer park where we lived. The preoccupation was likely sparked by a combination of all of these things. But let's talk about the trailer park, my earliest 3D environment. My mom and dad bought the trailer because it had a working fireplace and it was close to my grandparents' house. You can see the chimney there sticking out of its aluminum roof. My parents were young and full of dreams still. We lived exactly halfway between Flint and Detroit, Michigan. My stepdad was a GM assembly line worker, and our family, like many of the families around us, were a part of these big three dreams, big three being GM, Chrysler, Buick. But if you've seen Michael Moore's 1989 film Roger and Me, then you know that those dreams would be dashed. GM, the largest corporation in the world at the time, had been headquartered in Flint. But in the late to mid 80s, 11 plants were closed, resulting in 35,000 jobs that were lost, which forever decimated Flint's economy. The other young, aspiring families that we called neighbors certainly were not spared, nor was my own. The consolation? Auto World, an $11 million amusement park that glorified cars. Needless to say, it failed within 6 months. Growing up with an empire crumbling around you is an interesting way to come of age. I'll just summarize the feeling with this image of the Packard, the largest abandoned factory in the world. Ironically, as a teenager, it would become a place that I went to escape the crumbling because it was the epicenter of the Detroit rave scene in the 90s. Perhaps that's where the preoccupation really got rolling. So, fast forward 18 years, I'm a graduate student at Dartmouth, rubbing shoulders with all these fairy tale scholars. I fixate on fairy tales. Not like fairy tales where it's castles and princesses, but more like magical beliefs as they're evidenced across cultures. And the world over, there's these oral tales where people are rallying stories that subvert, resist, and reinvent the social order. And that's all I ever really wanted to do. I just want to sit around with people, use my imagination, invent and dream and problem solve and connect. And with that, I started a project called Parallel Narratives, which is where I met the person that invited me to present here tonight. In 2018, I started this project where it's essentially a way of transforming a 10-minute version of your life story into some type of magical tale. And I met people from all over the world who share my preoccupation. So now I'm going to share two of the recent creative projects that have been informed by my method in parallel narratives. So this is a project that I did with Stephanie Wilson, who's a local musician, where we sat down and mapped out and talked through all of these different aspects of her personal narrative to create this 4-screen Fantasia that was in Burlington City Hall, essentially a 35-minute music video visual album that we screened on 4 screens. Really amazing project. You can see it on YouTube. It's called Ex Votive. Taking that a step further, I learned some skills about video production, and I worked with Latin indie musician Marcy Hernandez on a project where we recently went to Spain and filmed a music video for her unreleased track Easy on Me, which will be coming out in April. And in that project, we were really exploring not just our own narratives, but the magical narratives and the surroundings of this magical, incredible place that we found ourselves in. So, man, I'm like, I have to stop and breathe for a second. I'm just like going for it. All of that said, it's like pretty hard to dissect where the preoccupation started, but here's what I've learned from it. I don't have to be an expert on anyone else's stories except my own. I don't have to be versed in anyone else's magic. I just need to listen and share related stories that I've been collecting through my preoccupation over the past how many decades. And that's it. The magical inventions are born within the space in between. I'd like to leave you with a new definition of preoccupation. Before you decided what to do for money or what you should do, there was this other thing, the thing that you're made of in a very basic sense. Mine is to create magical narrative inventions. What's yours?
Thank you, Trish. Okay, our next presenter is Peter Burns. Yeah, he's got a fan club over there. And his presentation is called Cycling Through Life. So welcome up, Peter.
Thank you. This is a show about a year's worth of cycling, starting in the wintertime and going through into the fall. Winter riding is hard, but there is a silver lining. People who know I ride through the winter think of me as tough, even badass. And for a skinny old bookish man like myself, that's deeply satisfying. Most of my winter riding is solitary and practical, but on World Cup soccer day, I went for a ride with these guys, and I forgot how much I love riding with friends. I felt very emotional. I thanked all of them for coming and riding with me. When it's too cold to ride recreationally, I go to the YMCA and ride a stationary bicycle. Here's a view from the window. And I know there's something ironic about riding a bicycle outside in order to ride a bicycle inside, but that's my best option. This is a early February ride on the Burlington bike path, and I'm grateful for all the technology, the lights, the studded tires, the electric mittens, and the electric socks. They all make that kind of ride possible. This is the first long ride of the springtime. When I leave Burlington, I get a feeling I call away. My heart opens, my breath is sweet, and I think of all the long summer rides to come, and I'm really grateful. These are my friends, the emus, a little bit further on the same ride. Every spring I go and make sure they're still around. And it's the kind of thing that you only see if you're in a bicycle. I wouldn't have noticed them if I was driving in a car. I had COVID this spring, and I couldn't work, but I could ride. And every day was a beautiful day, one after the other. And each day I went a little farther. And on the last day, I got to Westford, and I ate my lunch under that gazebo. It was a beautiful day. On a spring ride on the Colchester bike path, I stopped to pee behind a fence, and I found this treasure trove. I brought it home. I cleaned it off. I went to Hannaford's. I put it in the coin machine, and I made $14.72. As the days get longer, so do the rides. I have a friend who really loves this brand of chocolate. It was a great excuse to ride up to St. Albans and get her some. It was a hot day, but I managed to get all the chocolate back without any of it melting. I met this couple in the wilds of Colchester. They were heading up to St. Albans, and they were to take Route 7. I said, I know a better route. Follow me. So I took them on back roads, and in gratitude, in St. Albans, they bought me lunch at the Traveler's Cup. I love to ride, and I love to swim. When I ride, I get hot. When I swim, I cool down. And when I get back out of the water and onto my bike, I feel like I could pedal forever. Ah, sunflower, weary of time, who countest the steps of the sun, seeking after that sweet golden clime where the traveler's journey is done, where the youth pined away with desire and the pale virgin shroud with snow, arise from their graves and follow where my sunflower wishes to go. On a ride this summer in North Ferrisburg, I met a woman wearing this shirt. And I said, Yastrzemski, I saw him play in 1967 when he won the Triple Crown. She said, that's great information. I'm going to the Hall of Fame right now. I'll look it up. This is the Winooski Bike Gang. 2 of the members are in this room. We ride every Wednesday. The 4 of us in the front are known as ambassadors. The correct address to ambassador is Your Excellency. So if you see me in an orange shirt, you know how to talk to me. Purple asters, my favorite flower, but always tinged with sadness because I know it's the end of the summer. I think of the long rides you have taken and of the shorter rides to come in the fall. Now, riding is wonderful, but there is a dark side. Twice I've fallen off this path into Gilbrook Pond. Luckily, neither time, I wasn't hurt either time, and even more luckily, no one ever saw me because that would have been deeply embarrassing. This is my favorite place to take a photograph on the causeway. This is a fall photograph. I have one for the winter, and I'm looking forward to the spring and summer photographs that will complete the series, complete the season. If life is 4 seasons, I'm in the late fall of mine. I am not as strong as I used to be. There's a sense of loss, but I'm committed to riding these dirt roads for as long as I possibly can. This was the Halloween ride this year. It was beautiful weather. Hundreds of people showed up. For a while, I was riding next to Miro Weinberger. He was dressed as a pirate, and you'll have to decide for yourself whether that was appropriate or not. Myself, I know this costume is appropriate for me. At the beginning of November, I started riding to the end of the causeway before work every morning. And I hope this image gives you a sense of the space and the light. And I want you to all ride with me. I want to invite you to ride because this is the kind of thing you find if you jump on your bike and head out. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, or should I say Your Excellency. So next up, we have John Brawley, and his presentation is The Music of Chance. Welcome up, John.
All right, well, part of the problem of answering the phone and finding yourself agreeing to come up here one day is sitting through to the end and then being into all these stories and then completely forgetting what you're going to talk about. But I think I'll remember it. Okay, here we go. So let's do it. Okay, so in the mid-1800s, Henry David Thoreau took a a horse-drawn carriage out to Chatham, Massachusetts, got off when they got stuck in the sand, and decided to walk 30 miles up to Provincetown. And he wrote about it in a story in a journal called Cape Cod. And along this way, what he was doing was exploring the beach. You know, these are the illustrations from the book. On the left is Cape Cod, parts of it. And he did this distance staying with people, meeting people along the way, but also considered it an exercise of philosophy and wanted to merge with nature. And when I read this a few times back, probably 30 years ago, and it really stuck with me. I wanted to do more hiking. I know we all do hiking and walking here. So I started doing some longer hikes. And this is this interesting, bizarre photograph is my GPS track in Chatham going down South Beach to North Monomoy Island. And I would do this in the middle of the winter when no one would be out there. And you can see it looks like I'm walking in the middle of the ocean out here, but actually the sands there shift all the time. So they're very dynamic. And this is the scene. When you head out to the Cape in January, you'll see these beautiful bed forms of sand, and you can walk for miles. I'd walk for 7 to 10 miles one way and then come back and spend the whole day out there, sometimes with a friend, sometimes alone, and just not encounter anyone, except occasionally I'd come up and find an occasional seal pup who, in this case, was very, I think, kind of happy to see me. He was sunning in the beach here among all these wind-driven dunes and debris, and it's really beautiful. And then a few steps later, of course, the scenery changes because the other part of nature is some seal pups just don't make it. They die of either starvation or disease. And when you see these things on these solitary walks, you think about life and how fragile it is and how important it is. But you also see the cycle of life. This blackback herring gull is making most of a meal here. I know it's kind of a gory, horrific picture, but I want to put it. I moved to Duxbury, Massachusetts eventually, and this is Duxbury Beach, the white sandy beach here. I spent almost every day walking about 6 miles out to Gurnett Point and back, where I can just think about life, make a lot of important decisions in my life, and look at the bay. This is the beach front here. This is my daughter Jane and her friend Katiana. I'd take the kids out now and then, and we'd go for these long walks to just get away from everything and try to understand the meaning of life. And Gurnett Road, which is this next slide coming up, is where I spent so many days pre-dawn watching the sun come up over Provincetown in the distance and make major decisions in my life. So I was merging with nature, I was meditating, and I also thought, I have to get back to Vermont. I used to live here in the 80s. And so I made this big decision to come back to Vermont. And the next slide shows, there's the green state. In the background is Mount Philo. And as it turns out, I ended up moving to a house basically right next to Mount Philo to the right. And I thought, well, since Mount Philo's there and I'm here, I might as well start hiking it every day. So that's what I did. I started walking up Mount Philo, initially with my dog, Ollie. This is Ollie or Ollie Vu or El Doggeters or El Doggerino, if you're not into the whole brevity thing. And so this is the first picture I took from this vantage point on top of Mount Philo with Ollie. And then I thought, well, I need a project while I'm up here. I need something to do. So in 1995, Harvey Keitel's in this movie Smoke. He plays Augie Wren. This is a movie written by Paul Auster and Wayne Wang. Here he is. He owns a cigar shop in Brooklyn. Every day at 8 a.m., he takes the picture of his cigar shop every day, looking directly at it from across the street. And that's his life's work, he says. He befriends, by chance, Paul Benjamin, played by William Hurt. And in this scene, they're looking through 10,000 pictures that Augie Wren had taken from that point, looking at a cigar shop. And Paul Benjamin says, I don't understand. They're all the same. And Augie Wren says, they're all the same. But if you slow down and look carefully, you're going to see a lot of differences every day, a different way of looking at the world. So if I showed all the 550 pictures I've taken from the top of Mount Philo in the last year and a half, we'd be here for another hour and 45 minutes. So we can't do that. But these are some samples. This is June 21st, September 21st from the top. Every day looks somewhat the same, but you see they change all the time. Here's December 21st. Here's March, spring equinox. The same place, about 7 a.m. every day for the last 18 months. Now, while I'm doing this, I'm running into people, of course. And I didn't know them, so I had to come up with these names. I had to, until I got to know the names. Long Leash Larry, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, Slim Jim, G.I. Joe, who had things written on his pants, the Panthers, Miss Lonely Hearts, Mustache Man, No Leash, the No Leash Clash, the Puffer, the Slip Kid, the Girlfriend. These were all like funny things that kept me laughing while I was walking up, like, hey, look at those guys. And here's a montage of some of these folks that over the last few years I've become friends with them. These are the people that I'd see every morning, and now we have this community. We talk to each other, we share information. We don't spend a lot of time talking because we all kind of want to do our thing and unravel our brains. But lo and behold, unbeknownst to me, one of these folks was what I'm told was somewhat inspired by my project, my Augie Wren project. Started taking pictures like this and posting them on Instagram every day. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what's going on here? So I ended up running into this person and spending time with her. This is the mystery person here, who's actually here. And walking up and taking our pictures together. We went out when it was 20 below a few weeks ago and took our pictures and posted them. And we've talked a lot about our experiences walking on Mount Philo every day, just like Thoreau walking on Cape Cod. And I'll just end this. This is a picture about 20 years ago of me in Wellfleet out at Great Island in one of the coldest winters that I can remember out there, checking out the scenery and looking out, wondering what I'd be doing in 20 years, not knowing that I'd be standing here talking to you all about walking. So that's the music of chance. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Okay, so we are at our ultimate, our final presenter of the evening, and this is Joel Gardner, and this is entitled Sing Again. So welcome up, Joel.
I think what is so fascinating before we start is some things just keep bouncing around in my head, like 10,000 photos, that's come up a couple of times. 30 years, that's come up a couple of times. Connections like Bill's house in Newton. I just moved here from Newton in June. So it's like there's so much community that we don't even know about, and I'm so happy to be a part of what we're doing here tonight. So thank you all for coming. Seeing Again. You can roll this. This is 30 years. It's about the past. It's about where we are. It's about how photography kind of helps us dissolve the boundary between the past and the present. When we see a photograph, we're right there. There's this wonderful Stephen Hawking quote, what accounts for the difference between the past and the future? And I really wonder that every day. There's this idea of presentism versus eternalism. These are big thoughts. I don't have them, but I share with you that you could look it up. Waiting for a ferry, a kind of a metaphor for life, of course. The Buddhists always talk about the big ferry boat. We all need to get on that, get everybody on that. I took this ferry 30 years ago going the opposite direction to California on that motorcycle. And that's a photograph that I sort of love and cherish because it's an old Polaroid. It's the only picture I have of that time. And that was something I carried in a wallet, if you can imagine, not on an iPhone. They didn't exist. A beautiful trip, though. That's where I learned to ride, in that courtyard at Shelburne Farms. Don't tell them. My mother is not a fan, but she did pose for the photograph with my current motorcycle named Emerson. Again, a name that's come up tonight. This is a truce. I call this a document of, a diplomatic truce has been arranged. She's actually the one who gave me my first camera. She said, "You're blind as a bat. Take pictures and then you can look at the blow-ups." So. Compassion is the thing that really drives me as a photographer. I mean, a photographer in the sense it's my passion. At one point I did interior and architectural photography and all kinds of technical things, but right now I just look. I use whatever camera I have at hand to look, and those are dear friends in pain, and it's a really important thing, I think, sometimes to see and to show that. The past always comes into and informs what we are seeing now, as does the future. This flower was in the backyard here this summer at a time when a dear friend passed away, and that was my father. Snapshots, of course, we all have them. I love here this idea that A photograph captures a thing that is unintended to be signaled. And in this case, my older son, who's shorter in the photo here, is crouching down. And he's essentially doing this performative hug love thing of his brother. And they do love each other, but it's amusing to me to see that. And yet it's also true. The past isn't just a linear progression to a future through this present. In the present we're looking back and we're looking forward all the time. And when I cleaned out this closet, I came across this old typewriter, which is the same model my father used to use. I bought it at a tag sale. And it kind of caught me in that thought. The hackneyed Dante quote, "The straight way was lost." Well, it's sort of fascinating because here, I don't want that straight way. You can see, maybe you can see the curly little things on the map there. That's what I'm always looking for when I'm out in the world. And that's the way that time for me is recursive and how photography feeds that. Or sometimes makes it stand still. I don't know exactly when this photograph was taken, but I remember that my feeling was, this is a moment I can look at my son and have him stop and let me see him. Fountain pen in his pocket there, like his old dad. There's a popular theory about the way the world works called the multiverse, everything everywhere all at once, that kind of thing. And it's really fun and it makes for great martial arts movies. But I actually think this is all we get. And I'm happy with that. I'm okay with it. Although it's true that sometimes we don't know where to look. Almost a Disc Farmer, I don't know if you know that photographer. But I love this image of two of my very favorite people in the world. My wife on the right side of the screen with glasses, and her sister. And you see by their overlapping figures something of their overlapping souls. The poet Bianca Stone says that poetry is a passing down of breath. I hope I quoted you right. This is an excerpt for something that we're doing, and I don't know what it is. My other son, Jack, the one who was sort of mugging and doing the love thing with his brother before, got a job at this gas station. And this is just a photograph of a kid in his shirt at work. But to me, this is the kid who's in this shirt at this job because in high school he took auto mechanics, knowing that, because he'd heard of it, you could take a V8 engine and create a tow rope for a ski slope. I said, go with it. That's your dream. The brutality of the things that we pass, the things that impinge upon our consciousness, the kind of sublime terror of traveling places we don't know. That was Florida, Massachusetts, so they have snowplows in Florida. My sister's also in the audience, and again, a photograph for Time Stands Still, and in this one I asked myself, is it her mood that shapes the light, or is it the light that shapes her mood? There's so much here that is just about that stillness. This photograph of my wife just appeared on a shelf one day when I was looking for something to read. And I sort of love everything about it. It's from before I met her. I mean, years before. She's a dancer. I love even the way the glass is slipping in the frame. And here sometimes the dancer is the danced. Yeah, that was a particularly insistent cat on being taken care of. A lot of what I consider so valuable and important about the photographs we take every day, the ones we work very hard to take, the ones that we just take casually, is this kind of way in which it's a conversation between love and mortality. And in this image of Shelburne Farms, that's the big old farm barn, that lightning rod that you see in the middle coming from that central clock tower, it sort of signifies that intersection of love and mortality. We can spend so much time in the world, in this present, with the people we love and doing the things that we do, but slowing down and spending time to just look up and to see what's right there in front of us is so valuable. And I do want to say about John Brawley, by the way, I knew this man had something special because one day I showed up at work where I knew him somewhat casually, and he said, "Have you ever had a hen of the woods?" And I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And he reached in the back of his pickup truck, and he gave me a fungus the size of a chicken. And he said, "They're great." And he told me how to saute it up, so thank you all.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, so if we could just give a round of applause for all of these great presenters tonight. What a great lineup. Thank you to all of you for those presentations. They were amazing. Thank you for spending the time. So I'm going to just run through these really quickly. So we have a new website. It's pknburlington.com. You should check it out. It's got the video. It's got presentations from the past 32 volumes. Definitely go on there. It has our next events. You can sign up to present on there, so please check it out. I want to also just say Media Factory as well. As the presentations from tonight will eventually live on that website, so you can relive the experience if you so choose. And then a shout out to, again, all of our supporters, Mascoma, Media Factory, Solidarity of Unbridled Labor, and 7 Days. And then I'm going to keep pitching this because we love to have all of you get up on the stage. If you want to present, go to our website. There's a form you can fill out, super easy. We would love to have your stories and your passions on display. If you have any questions tonight after the event, you can find the people wearing these t-shirts. We would love to answer any questions that you have, or if you want to tell us what you liked about the event. There's also a step and repeat banner that's kind of in the back. And I think we're going to have one of us is going to, if anyone wants to share some things in front of the camera about things they really enjoyed, their favorite presentation, we'd love to hear what you have to say and some of your thoughts tonight. And then also there's an after party that's going to be at American Flatbread. I think they're open until 10, so they know that some of us are going to go over there, so everyone is welcome. We also can be found on social media, all the favorite social media services. And then lastly, just a big thank you to all of you for coming out tonight and making tonight possible, and all of your enthusiasm, and for cheering and doing the PechaKucha chant. Just thank you so much for all that you brought tonight. So thank you so much. Have a great night, and we'll see you in June.